Washed up thoughts come to church and get told that they still deserve love, still deserve a traditional outcome, even though they've lived very untraditionally. Forgiveness has become an entitlement, and I knew we would get to this eventually. This was in my notes as well. One of the great things, now people want to say, well, Rollo, why are you a Christian? Right. Well, first of all, my mom was a Christian, so I've got that. I got that as my basis. As I said, my mom kind of planted the seed of like belief and faith in me, which is, I think, a good thing. My father, on the other hand, was like very much a secular humanist atheist. So my rational side comes from my dad. My more, openness to metaphysics comes from my mom. Okay. One is male and rational. The other one is female and probably emotional. I mean, really, let's be honest. But one of the things I wrote about in my fourth book, in it's right here, available on Amazon, please get it. If you're going to come at me, by the way, if you're gonna show up, like, you don't have to do this, but you'll probably do yourself a favor if you've read this book before you come to the studio, or before like you require demand a debate from Rollo Tomasi about religion and everything else. Before you do that, do me the solid and at least read half of that book, because then you'll have a much better understanding. You will probably have a lot of things squared away for you, and you will be in a less embarrassing position by calling me out because people go, well, Rollo says this all the time. I go, no, it's in the book, brah. It's here. Would you like me here? I'll read it to you, right? It's been available for, it's 2021, so it's been available for 3 years, right? Oh, you haven't read The Rational Male? It's been available for 10 fucking years. Why not? You're supposed to be this expert on the red pill. You're going to tell me how everything's supposed to be and what we're all about. And those red pill guys, X and X and Y and Z. Did you read this part? No. You always talk about spinning plates. Did you read the plate theory chapters? No. Oh, well, maybe you should do that before you start asking me shit. Anyways, coming back to this, forgiveness that's key, because the one religion that is based on salvation by grace is Christianity. Okay. You might be a little bit on the fence with Catholicism, but it's still basically the same thing, right? That's one of the reasons why Christianity, and to a lesser degree, Krishna, and I only throw Krishna in here because Tulsi Gabbard was a Krishna, and I had to look that up when I was writing that. I was writing this. I was like, why is Krishnaism so popular amongst Western women? And I discovered why. It's basically Christianity without the judgment for women. So when I was doing my background research, when you go and you look at, say, Islam, or you look at Judaism, or you look at a lot, hell, even like just like pantheistic, polytheistic religions are based on works. You don't get to talk to God until you like slaughter your enemies, right? Until you climb to the highest mountain, which seems logical. But you don't get to have, there's no atonement for sin and without the shedding of blood, right? There has to be some act before you can seek forgiveness, is it Yom Kippur or is it Rosh Hashanah? I can't remember which one it is, but it's like the Day of Atonement. Like there's acts you have to do. There's rituals, there's functions you have to perform. Same thing with Islam. Same thing with really kind of Catholicism, but like maybe less so. But for Christianity in itself, grace is given freely, right? Forgiveness is a core tenet of that religion. So, I mean, really, realistically, one of the points of contention between Catholicism and Protestantism is that is by faith we're saved, not by grace we're saved, rather than by your acts. And I think that really rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, because that core concept, again, it's debt. Remember what we said about debt? So the core concept is that you have debt, but it's like forgiven because you believed in Jesus Christ, and all of your debts are forgiven, and all of Jesus died for our sins. There's no greater debt than that. You're going to go to hell, but Jesus stepped in. You had a debt to pay, and the Lord stepped in and said, no, not this one. And you go to heaven and not hell, right? You paid a debt. It's also a symbolic representation of male sacrifice too. Men are the sacrificial sex, and there's no greater sacrifice than dying for the sins of the world. One man, God voluntarily martyred himself to atone for the sins of the world, right? Atonement and all that, debt. You got a debt to pay. You're going to go to hell if you don't pay this debt. And there's no fucking way you're going to be able to pay it. But by grace, we're saved. You believe in Jesus Christ and all your debts are paid, right? You go into heaven by grace. But that rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, because it used to be like, well, you have to do these acts and do all this, perform these functions, these articles of faith and these acts of faith in order to get salvation. And once the Protestants come around and go, it's about grace. It's about forgiveness, like unconditional forgiveness. It's a gift. Oh, now you know why wars were fought over this, because I'll tell you, that probably ruined a lot of people's commercial interests as a result of that. So that's how you get plenary indulgences and all this other shit. So, but Christianity alone, amongst all certainly the Abrahamic religions, is based on forgiveness. And that's why it's popular with women who enter the epiphany phase. Because by the time they get to 29, 30, 31 years old, and it's like, oh my God, I got to get right with God. I got to find the right guy. Oh, not you, mister. I'm doing this the right way this time. You know, I was so crazy in my college years. I had my fun. No fun for you anymore, mister. We need to get serious and get down to business. And if you're not ready to marry me in the next 6 months, then I'm going to need to move on, because I need to get right with the Lord. And this is where I'm at right now. And it's really just based out of necessity. It's making necessity your virtue. And nothing is more convenient for women in the epiphany phase than a religion that is based on forgiveness of all the shit that she did when she was in her party years and her whole phase. Well, Jesus has forgiven her. Why can't you? That's fancy. That's why people go, well, how come women aren't just like flocking towards Islam? How come they're not flocking towards Judaism? Because there's no forgiveness in it. They got like, especially in a gynocentric social order where we keep telling women, don't judge me. Don't be so judgmental. You know, it's so judgy, judgment this and judgmentalism that. And they want to avoid judgmentalism like it's the fucking plague. Well, there's only one religion that really sort of lets you off the hook like immediately. And that's Christianity. And that's why women love it. And that's why you get Beth Moore. And that's why you get like women's ministry. And I'll tell you, you want some real franchises? Another thing that's mentioned in my book is women's ministry and all the conventions they go to, and they all write their own self-published books. It's just like the grifters that you see in the manosphere and in the tratosphere and everything else sphere. They're entrepreneurs too. And the reason why they do women's ministry is because they're not allowed to actually preach, because in the Bible, it says that women aren't allowed to preach, although that's changing now too, right? You change the doctrine. That's how religions get assimilated. Islam, Judaism, Christianity, Catholicism, Mormonism, more and more these days too. If you name the religion, and I will show you where a gynocentric social order is changing, starting with the doctrine. Then the doctrine, after after a generation, that doctrine becomes part of the faith. Then it branches off into something new, right? So what happens if you want to destroy a religion, or if you want to assimilate a religion and turn it into something that's more palatable for your people, or your sex, or your race, or whatever else is you become a part of it, and then you slowly change the doctrine of it. And once you change the doctrine, which is the practices, right, then you change the faith itself. People go, oh, no, Lord, the word of the Lord will stand for forever. Well, not if there's no one left who still believes that. Religions are like memes. They live and they die by who remembers what the fuck they're supposed to do. That's why today in like sort of Western society, people are really upset, because they think that the West is following its degeneracy. And oh my God, well, enjoy the decline. We're on a hellbound train. Well, the reason why they're so upset about that is because if enough people finally say, okay, we're going to be poly, or we're going to do something completely different, or we're going to interpret the Bible this way officially, and everybody who used to interpret it the other way suddenly dies off, now the faith changes. And I'm not saying that actually happens. I'm just saying that that's the concern, that it could happen. So when I listen to Charlie Kirk say something like, oh, don't worry about it, we're all just going to have more babies than them liberals, and those progressives are going to die out and go extinct because they don't want to have children. Well, we just saw a 53-year-old woman who is definitely not having any children because she's already in menopause, or probably through it by then. And what's the big deal? She doesn't care. I don't care if she's liberal or conservative, when she's not going to be producing any children that are going to carry those beliefs on into perpetuity. So when you hear Charlie Kirk say, well, we're just going to outbreed the liberals and the leftists, it's the same concept. It's like, well, there won't be anyone left to believe what they believe. And so therefore the world will be a better place because now only us will exist and they'll be gone and they'll be extinct. Which there was another group of Germans in the late 1930s who pretty much said the same thing, but they took matters into their own hands rather than just, say, hey, let's fuck and have a lot of babies. Eugenics is something that can be achieved through a lot of different methods. So